Hello and thanks for joining us for another edition of Northwest Newsweek. I'm Mitchell Ringos. The efforts of a 4-year investigation into the murder of Henry Stone Arnold paid off as Dryden OPP have announced the arrest of 3 people in the case. The 28-year-old victim disappeared in early August of 2018 and a widespread search led to the tragic discovery of human remains. Adam Riley has the details.
On August 8, 2018, Henry Stone Arnold disappeared. The following day, his vehicle was located on a property on Jonasson Road, south of Dryden, which kicked off a full air and ground search for the 28-year-old. 8 days later, human remains were found at a property on Trist Road, which were later identified as belonging to Stone Arnold. Now 4 years later and 3 years after a reward for information was offered, police have made a breakthrough.
We have now been able to arrest and charge 3 people in connection with the death of Henry Stone Arnold. These 3 individuals who are facing charges will now go before the courts, not necessarily all at the same time. And of course, the court process is a lengthy one. So there will be a whole series of court proceedings that they will go through before there is any eventual trial.
Of the 3 individuals, 2 have each been charged with first-degree murder and committing an indignity to a body, as Stone Arnold's remains had been damaged when they were discovered. A 3rd individual has been charged with obstruction, uttering threats, and accessory after the fact to murder. None of the 3 accused can be identified as they were all under 18 at the time of the crime.
Both we can't release the name, nor could the media actually report on the names because of the Youth Criminal Justice Act. But I can tell you that the accused individuals and the victim were known to each other.
As well, Dixon says despite having 3 people now charged, the investigation isn't over.
It's not over from the police investigation side of the house at all. We will continue to investigate this to follow any other potential leads that still could come in. And if there are any other charges that are found to be grounds to lay them, we will lay them.
Adam Riley, TBT News.
Meanwhile, the OPP have also made a breakthrough into the investigation of the disappearance of 26-year-old Alyssa Turnbull in Nipigon 2 years ago, with a father and son duo being charged with committing an indignity to a body and obstructing police. But as Jonathan Wilson reports, the OPP admit they have yet to locate Turnbull's remains.
It has taken time, a 27-month investigation. That's a lot of work.
OPP are now speaking publicly about what finally led to a pair of arrests in the Alyssa Turnbull case. A father and son from Nipigon were formally charged this week.
As of right now, we have 2 individuals, Brian Seuss, who's 60, and Nick Seuss, who's 27, are both charged with committing an indignity to a body and obstruction of justice. Both of those are criminal code accounts. We wouldn't be able to lay the charge. We wouldn't have laid the charge if there weren't the grounds to believe that these individuals did have some connection to Alyssa's body after the fact.
Investigators are presuming that Turnbull was the victim of a homicide in the spring of 2020, with her remains hidden somewhere in the Nipigon area. Extensive police searches have been conducted, including at the Nipigon sewage treatment plant in November of 2020. But so far, those searches have come up empty.
We don't know 100% that she is deceased because we have not found human remains to tie to her case. But the evidence that has come to light as part of the ongoing investigation has so far resulted in enough grounds to charge these 2 individuals. Now, they're not being charged with killing her. They're not being charged with abducting her, just committing an indignity, which could mean anything related to perhaps moving a body after someone is deceased. And obstructing justice, that goes to say, without saying, that's basically misleading or failing to tell the truth to investigators.
Dixon couldn't say whether tips from the public led to the arrests, but a $50,000 reward remains available to anyone who has information that leads to the discovery of Turnbull's remains. And he says the OPP will definitely try to get the Seusses to reveal what happened to her.
Will we be talking to these 2 individuals at length? Absolutely. But we can't speculate on what they may or may not know. That is part of the ongoing investigation. But again, we can't rely on that part of it. We want to talk to everyone who is in the area who might have that piece of information. Yes, that will be part of it, but we want to talk to anyone who may have that piece of information that could lead to solving this case and finding out what really happened to Alyssa Turnbull.
Turnbull's mother, Deb Otway, spoke off camera with TBT News on Tuesday and expressed thanks and appreciation to the OPP that somebody is finally being held accountable. But she said the news of the arrests is bittersweet, as it also rekindles a lot of pain and sadness for the family. Jonathan Wilson, TBT News.
In a separate case, a Fort Francis man has been charged with attempted murder after allegedly assaulting another person in that community. 30-year-old Joshua Party has been arrested following the incident on 5th Street East. The victim has taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries, and the accused has been remanded into custody. Anyone with information about the incident is asked to contact the OPP or Crime Stoppers. And flooding continues to be a problem for residents in several areas of the Northwest, but there is good news, as in many areas, water levels have either peaked or started to recede. Adam Riley has the latest from the region.
It's a slow process, but more and more sections of the Northwest are starting to appear back above water. Just less than 2 weeks ago, this section of Dryden's waterfront was inaccessible, and flows through the Domtar Dam have slowed, the effects of which have shown up downstream in the Eaton Rugby area. Water has also receded at Buller Creek. However, that section of Highway 105 to Red Lake remains closed. Meanwhile, in Fort Frances, some good news to report, as Rainy Lake has finally crested. However, Operations and Facilities Manager Travis Robb says the community isn't out of the woods just yet, as the area is about to enter its rainy season.
Inflows are declining, but they're very, very close to outflows. So even a moderate rain event will definitely see either those inflows, slowing, possibly lake levels rising again. We're still at a very volatile point in terms of where we are with the flooding and the lake levels.
Rob notes, however, there is still a large supply of sandbags on standby should the need arise. As well, he says there's roughly a 2-foot difference in water level between the lake and the river, which is why some businesses, Point Park and the Couchiching First Nation, which reside alongside Rainy Lake, have gotten the worst of the flooding. As well, the Sioux Narrows Nestor Falls area has also had to deal with higher water levels, which has put stress on lots of public and private dock infrastructure. Now, all that water has to go somewhere, and unfortunately, it's towards Kenora, which has already suffered from heavy flooding for several weeks now. Fire Chief Kent Redmond says all eyes are focused on the lake, but he's confident the city will be able to hold the line and protect assets.
It's going to filter its way through the lake and come up here to the Winnipeg River, but we're relying on the Lake of the Woods Control Board. They're providing us as accurate and up-to-date numbers as they can on what to expect as far as the rising water levels in the Kenora area and our portion of the Winnipeg River system. So definitely concerning. Doesn't unfortunately, it just keeps rising, and we're hoping that there's a peak here in the near future.
Earlier this month, the province declared several communities in the region as a flood zone and opened up emergency funding for residents. However, nothing so far for municipalities. Both Rob and Redmond says it's much too early to determine the amount of damage that has occurred, nor an estimate as to the cost for repairs. Adam Riley, TBT News.
The police misconduct hearing regarding the 2015 death investigation of Stacey DeBungy has concluded, with the tribunal set to meet again in September. Detective Sean Whipple and Staff Sergeant Sean Harrison are facing Police Act charges of neglect of duty and discreditable conduct. The proceedings, which were again held virtually due to the travel issues, began with prosecutor Joel Dubois completing his closing submissions. Dubois again argued that Harrison and Whipple had tunnel vision in their investigation due to DeBungy's Indigenous background. Aisha James, the lawyer representing the DeBungy family, then provided her final submissions. She argued that the officer's defense relies too heavily on what she called passing the buck and not taking any responsibility. A date for a verdict has not yet been set, but the tribunal is scheduled to meet again in September. When we come back, the Thunder Bay District Medical Officer of Health gives an update on the COVID front. Welcome back. The Thunder Bay District continues to see dozens of new COVID cases each week. It's a noticeable change from the past 2 years when cases dropped to near zero levels each June. But the health unit's top medical officer says COVID levels have been declining, and she hopes to see the trend continue. Lee Noonan has more.
But Omicron was really a game changer. We saw it really spread, and we saw it spread even more to people who were vaccinated.
While COVID numbers are still high compared to last June, they are at their lowest levels since December. The health unit is reporting 28 new cases since Wednesday and 98 active cases in the district. And Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Janet DeMille, is optimistic those levels will continue decreasing.
We're heading in the right direction, and certainly our last 2 summers, even though we might not get to where we were in those last 2 summers, I think just being able to be outside and summer, the virus could spread less anyway, so that will be on our side.
She adds that relaxed COVID restrictions are also a contributing factor.
Our interactions with one another will always be, that risk factor for the spread of the virus. So, when people are gathering together, especially indoors, especially when it's more crowded, those will always be circumstances where the virus can spread.
DeMille says it makes sense to keep masking to protect staff and vulnerable populations in healthcare settings, but the changes like the removal of the mask mandate for some situations, like public transit, are reasonable.
People could still choose to wear a mask, and I do recommend it or encourage it if it's an indoor crowded space, which would include on a bus, but at the same time, people don't have to, especially if they can physically distance.
DeMille also emphasizes the importance of immunity, whether from exposure or vaccination, in preventing hospitalizations and the spread of COVID, with vaccine clinics at the CLE continuing through July.
Whether it's first, second, third, fourth dose, people can walk in. We're also seeing, by the way, students, grades 7 through 12, who may not have had their routine immunizations over the last couple of years.
The TBDHU is looking ahead to fall vaccination efforts for both COVID and the flu, and preparing to respond to monkeypox should any cases arise here.
Certainly it's something to be concerned about, but not worried. I think we're getting prepared, we are prepared, and we'll respond quickly.
Lee Noonan, TBT News.
Workplace violence at the Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Center has increased 50% over the course of the pandemic. Hospital officials are appealing to the public to be patient and respectful towards frontline healthcare workers. Hospital CEO Rhonda Crocker-Ellicott says 213 incidences of violence were reported last year. That includes verbal and emotional attacks as well as physical assaults. But she says violent incidences often go unreported and that around half of their ER nurses experience workplace violence on a daily basis.
We recognize that as an organization, individuals, when they access the emergency department or any part of the Health Sciences Center, it can be an incredibly stressful and emotional experience. But at the same time, we really need the respectful and courteous communication and interactions and patience within the process.
The staff-led working group is developing further strategies that will be rolled out first in the emergency department and eventually hospital-wide. In the meantime, the hospital has started a new poster campaign focused on raising public awareness of the issue and putting a stop to these kind of incidents. Some great news for hockey players and figure skaters in Terrace Bay as new brine pumps have been purchased by the town. Last fall, arena ice was put in jeopardy after several issues cropped up with the main and secondary brine pumps which produce ice, as well with the base upon which all the pumps sit on. The issues stem from the fact that no replacement parts were available due to the age of the equipment. Fortunately, a workaround was found through community and volunteers and spare parts which are equally as old from the town's mill. Mayor Jody Davis says the tender for the project came in under budget at $47,000 and is happy to know the system will be ready for the fall.
Bird Chilling is the contractor, new contractor we've never worked with before. They come in on budget with the estimate, and the brine pumps will arrive here in August and hopefully be installed shortly thereafter, so we'll be able to start the arena up in schedule. So all's looking well right now. So hopefully that'll hold until we decide in the soon future that we'll decide what we're going to do with the arena.
Davis says the town will likely have to begin exploring its options for a new arena, as the current one is almost as old as the pumps that were replaced. Thunder Bay's proposed multi-use turf facility may have been denied federal funding through Ottawa's Green and Inclusive Community Buildings program. The local MP and Cabinet Minister Patty Hajdu says other projects in the area, with at least one in Thunder Bay, were successful.
Thunder Bay has for sure a funded project, and in fact, Thunder Bay Superior North has funded projects within our region. Unfortunately, I'm not able to disclose at this time yet which the successful candidates have been, but obviously it's important to me that our region gets access to federal programs like this Clean and Green Infrastructure Fund.
The Art Gallery's new facility at the waterfront is among the local projects for which funding was wanted. Lakehead University also applied for funds in regards to a new Indigenous Learning and Programming Center. Successful applicants can't announce the money until Infrastructure Canada is ready to do so. The City of Thunder Bay has already announced that the turf facility did not make the cut, nor did a proposed 96-bed long-term care home plan for Fort William First Nation. The government has made it clear that it's prepared to accept submissions again later this year. Coming up after the break, Kenora's Husky the Muskie gets some much-needed tender loving care. Welcome back. And after many years, Kenora's Husky the Muskie is starting to show his age, and as a result, is undergoing a rehabilitation for the third time in his 55-year life. The facelift comes as part of the city's Harborfront Business Development Plan and has brought in the services and skills of nationally recognized company. Adam Riley has the details.
He's made up of 36 sheets of plywood, 3,500 bolts, 700 pounds of resin, 500 square feet of fiberglass, a ton of steel, countless tubes, and stands tall as a reminder to protect the environment. But after years of weather, graffiti, and age, Husky the Muskie is beginning to look a little rough-ski. And as a result, the city of Kenora has hired some experts to bring him back to his former glory. Frank Hadfield is the president of Dinosaur Valley Studios and says the 12-meter-tall sculpture was in relatively good physical shape for a 55-year-old.
It was mostly paint fading, some paint flaking, but there was no structural damage to any of the fiberglass up top. There were a couple of holes in the middle, and a little bit on the bottom that we patched up, but up top he was in great shape and not really that bad on the bottom either. We'll get rid of we sanded down through the etching of the graffiti, so that'll be taken care of and should be good as new.
Built in 1967 for Canada's centennial by the Kenora Chamber of Commerce, this is the third time Husky has had a refit, with the first two happening in 1980 and 1994. The project has a $125,000 price tag attached and is being funded entirely through the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund Corporation, FedNor, and the city's municipal accommodation tax. Husky isn't the first roadside attraction Hadfield has worked on, and he says the amount of attention this project has garnered, it likely won't be the last, as there are many statues across the Northwest and beyond who will eventually need a facelift.
We do we have a lot of projects already on the go for natural history museums and for interpretive centers and such. So they kind of have to get in line, and this season of refurbishment is pretty short in Canada, right? So it's kind of like you better book your spot relatively early or else we need more crews.
Hadfield notes when they are completed, the statue may, from a color and shading perspective, look a little different.
These fish come in a variety and a wide range of colors, like not changing the colors, but the tones of the colors and the time of year. We learned that when we did our northern pike for Rochon Sands, Alberta. So we're going to change them up a little bit, but still sort of stay with the feel of the old one, if you will.
The 10-day-long restoration is expected to be completed by Monday. Adam Riley, TBT News.
And convocation for students of Confederation College continued this past week with ceremonies at the college's satellite campuses in Kenora, Dryden, Sioux Lookout, and Fort Frances. This year marks the first time since 2019 that graduates were able to walk across the stage to accept their certificate or diploma due to the pandemic. Almost 30 students participated at the ceremony on campus in Fort Frances, with some crossing the stage more than once as they fulfilled the requirements of multiple programs. Awarding the diplomas was President Kathleen Lynch, who wanted to help celebrate their accomplishments. She says approximately 70 students in total at the Fort Frances campus have graduated their programs over the last 2 years.
Generally, our populations are smaller in the region, but no less important. So we're always looking to promote the college and our programming. So hopefully people get inspired by seeing people cross the stage. And I think that's the case when you look out in the audience and you see families out there. There's always brothers and sisters and relatives watching, and hopefully they'll see college as a place for them too.
Meanwhile, Mattawa Education and Care Center held a very special graduation ceremony of its own for its 2022 graduating class. This was the first graduation event in their newly renovated building on Lily Street. A total of 5 students successfully obtained their Ontario Secondary School diploma. 2 of them were there in person and 3 attended virtually. Antoine Muniz was the class valedictorian and also took home an award. Principal Brad Battison says he'll have fond memories of this year's graduates.
Our whole school is proud of our graduates. They have persevered through so much with COVID and the isolation associated with it. A lot of our students have been remote learners and have been doing their courses from their home communities, which makes it also challenging as there's not consistent, reliable internet service in many of the northern communities. But they have worked hard, and we're just so proud that they finally get to celebrate this great achievement today.
The Mattawa Education and Care Center building will be completely finished this summer, and officials are looking forward to holding a larger graduation ceremony next year. And normally, getting caught in the act and ticketed by police is a bad thing. However, in Kenora this summer is the exact opposite if you are helping your community. Kenora OPP have brought back their positive ticketing campaign for the summer. If a youth in the community is caught doing something helpful for residents or safe activities like riding a bike with a helmet, if caught, they will receive a ticket for a treat from an officer. Detachment Commander Inspector Jeff Dugan says the aim is to see more positive interactions between officers and younger members of the public while promoting safe, active living.
Mom and dad, every day they tell their kids, wear your helmet, walk your bike across the road, help your neighbor, help me do this, help me do that, help me do yard work. And, parents say thank you, but if our officers can interact with those kids and thank them for doing the right thing and give them something for it, then it's all beneficial.
This is the second year the campaign has run following the success of last year, which Dugan couldn't provide numbers for as none of them used tickets were returned to allow for payment. He's also thankful for the sponsors who stepped forward supporting the campaign. Those who receive a ticket can redeem them at one of 5 businesses in the community. And that wraps up this edition of Northwest Newsweek. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time.